to be doing a mixed media journal. I'm going to start a new journal. I went to a crop a couple weekends ago and took a class from a woman named Christine Ballack, and she was doing this creative lettering class. But the thing that really struck me from her class was when I said that I did art journaling in my own space and that they were private, kind of like diaries. She was saying kind of the idea that that's kind of sad that I don't want to share my art with the rest of the world. So, and I'm kind of in agreement with that. So I decided that I would start a new notebook, and I would do what this notebook so that everyone can see what I put in this notebook. So this is going to be my first art journal that I'm sharing. So I've been doing art journaling for, I don't know, about a year, and I've been doing mixed media canvases and that kind of stuff as well, which if you've been following me at all, you've probably seen the All That I Love mixed media canvas. That was my first one that I did for you guys, and now I'm going to start a new notebook. So this is just a regular lined page notebook. There's nothing special about it. It has the elastic to close it. Eventually I will do something with the cover of it. But this is from, it's called A Personal Notebook, and it's from Letterbox. So it contains 160 line pages. So yeah, we'll see where we get with this book. So I've already kind of started, and what I started with was really purging my house. So I've started with the crawl space, and we're going through and finding, you know, boxes full of paperwork and boxes of this, box of that. And in there is this calendar. And for my mixed media projects, I really love calendars because they've got such clean, crisp images in them, right? And you get like a little mini catalog of what kind of images are in these calendars. And so since about 2009, I've been choosing calendars with a purpose. So to use them as backgrounds, to cover them, to use them as mixed media. The only thing that you need to pay attention to with catalogs, magazines, calendars, and all that stuff is that they're not archival. They are not acid free, they're not archival, and they do need, you know, even if you add a buffer to them over time, the buffer will fade and the acidity will come through and damage everything. So when you are picking something for scrapbooking, you want to make sure that it's archival, but art journaling and mixed media canvases give you the freedom to just create and not worry about the archival properties of it. So if you do want your mixed media projects to last a really long time, you wouldn't use acidic type of products and papers and so forth, but that's not the case here. This is my freedom of speech kind of time. So a lot of these images really spoke to me, and I will be using a lot of them in my other projects, but the ones that spoke to me for the cover page, the title page, is this one. It's the November calendar. So what it is you're looking from the bottom of a tree up at the top of the tree along the trunk. And I love trees. I draw trees all the time in almost everything I do. When I doodle, it's usually trees. And the other one is this Bohemian waxwing. The reason that the Bohemian waxwing spoke to me is because twice a year they flock to my yard and fill up my yard with their noise, and there's hundreds of them, and they stay for, I don't know, an afternoon, sometimes only a couple hours, and when they stay, they basically strip all of the mountain ash berries off my mountain ash tree, and they strip any berries in my yard that used to be are no longer. Take the remnants of apples and all that kind of stuff. So wish my camera would refocus here. But anyway, so I started with this calendar, 2009. I've pulled out the 2 pages with the tree and with the other, and this is where I've started. So I took the tree mostly on its own and cut out that page and put it as the background. And then I fussy cut out the Bohemian waxwing and had that image just over the edge of the over the edge of the book, the edge of the corner there. And the way that I adhered them was with the golden matte medium. I have a big bottle. I go through it quite a lot. So here's my matte medium. The next step that I did end up cutting this because this is the front cover of the book. It's going to be used a lot. I didn't want this to break on its own where the picture is. So I went ahead and before I inserted them and before I put them down with my matte medium, I went and cut along the edge so that they would lay flat and it wouldn't affect how many times I opened this book. The other thing that I did was, before I started, was I took the next page in the book and I matted it together with the front page so that it would add a little bit more stability, make this a little bit more solid, because it is my first book. Now, when I do this, I want a non-stick surface underneath this page because I don't want it to stick to the binding of the rest of my book. So what I do is I take a children's placemat, and if you've watched my videos, you've seen this a lot. A lot of people use a craft mat. That's fine. I use a kid's placemat. You know, they go through trends where they want a certain placemat and then they don't, so I just kind of, hey look, now it's mine, and run off with it. The weirdest things end up in my workshop. You never guess. Okay, so the reason that I've used a matte medium here is because I wanted a little bit of texture. Because this is an animal and this is a wild, I wanted it to be textured. I didn't want it to be a shiny magazine picture, although it is a shiny magazine picture. Now that I've got the matte finish on it, it's more touchable. It seems more real. It seems more earthy, and I really, really like that. Now, what I'm going to name this book is Pieces of Me, and along with that, I have an old punch from the Creative Memories collection, and it's literally a puzzle piece. So I went through and once again purging. Found this. It's a spring catalog full of flowers, right? And with me being a landscape design tech, I have a lot of these. I have a lot of gardening magazines, and I use a lot of them. Like when they get really old and I'm not going to use them anymore for ideas or anything, and especially when it comes to the catalogs where it's just pictures of pictures, and then once a lot of them go out of season, they don't come back. It's like scrapbooking materials or your favorite color of marker. You know, you fall in love with that color of marker and then you run out of it, you know, 2 seasons in, and all of a sudden it's out of circuit. Like, and you have to wait and wait and wait till it comes back in. Well, plant material is the same way. It goes in trends. It goes in life cycles. One year it'll be this kind of plant. The next year it'll be this kind of plant. One year it'll be one color, and the next year it'll be a different color. So I've gone and punched out 10 of these puzzle pieces, and now I'm going to attach them to my book. And how am I going to attach them? That's right, I'm going to use my matte medium once again. So I need my brush. Hold on a sec. So this is just a 1/2 inch Artist Loft brush, and I just take my materials right out of the jar. So sometimes I'll shake the jar, but my jar's getting kind of soupy in the lid, so I'm not going to shake it this time because I was just using it last night. So then I'm going to go through and I'm just going to piece it. So I want it to say Pieces of Me. And I don't want it to all be the same, so I'll just assemble them kind of randomly. It doesn't, it's artistry. It doesn't need to have really any format to it. And there I go. So this, it's my title page, and a lot of times when I'm doing my mixed media stuff, what I will start with is creating a really fancy background. So I'll use all kinds of textures and all kinds of stencils and all kinds of color and sprays and gelatos and inks and acrylics and all kinds of stuff. But because this is my title page, I'm just going to start out very gently, very slowly with, this is pieces of me. So once I'm done this, I'm just going to end up putting the words on over top, and then over top of these pieces, and then just leaving it very simple, very elegant, very basic. And the nice thing about this is it started out with this pinstripe kind of look to it, and it's a very neutral coloring. And I'm just gonna leave that as it is. I like that. I'm gonna leave it. It's great. It doesn't need any more to me. So I'm just gonna position them how I think they will be happiest. And I'm a little bit anal because I want the flowers to be upright like they would be in nature. Seems weird to have flowers upside down. I know that they do that on their own, but so that's how it's going to be. I'm just going to put down my mixed media, put it on, and then go over top one more time with my matte medium. So, yeah. The thing that I love most about mixed medium is the freedom. It's the fact that I don't have to conform to any kinds of shapes. I don't have to conform to any kinds of collections of things. I don't have to write down all of my supplies because they're really mostly the same every time I do a project. There's no stress of who's gonna see it, how many people are gonna see it, how many people are gonna judge it, and who wants to see their picture, you know, who I've left out of the album. There's none of that stress when it comes to mixed media, because there really isn't anybody in my mixed media albums, just me. There really isn't anyone in my art journals, just me. So there's no expectation by the people who view them to find themselves or find notes of themselves or to think that they should be a bigger part of them and so on. And that's part of the reason that I don't show my art journals to a lot of people, or to anyone really, is because I don't like the expectation of, well, how come I'm not in the book, and how come this person plays a bigger role in your life or your book than I do. And I really don't like that aspect of showing, where people say, oh well, how come I'm not in this book? Shouldn't I play a bigger role in your life? Shouldn't I play a bigger role in your album? And no, you shouldn't play a bigger role in my album, because it's pieces of me. It's not pieces of you, it's pieces of me. And it's my opportunity to be very, very selfish. It's, you know, my mother used to say, I smoke because it's the only thing I do for myself. And for a while, when I was younger, that's what I did, is I would smoke, and I would use her excuse, and I would say, I don't do anything for myself. This is what I do for myself. When really, self-sacrificing yourself through cigarettes is not exactly doing anything for yourself. It's the opposite of doing something for yourself. So when it comes down to being artistic and being who I want to be, and creating for myself, it really comes down to I am doing this for me. I'm doing this for my sanity, for my emotional support of myself, and so on. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of these projects. It just matters if I'm content with them. And there's lots of things that inspire me. You know, one of the major things that inspires me to create art is actually my children. And I say that because, for example, last night we had a campfire in our backyard, and my daughter we had the campfire going, and my daughter had been begging for it, and here she was, hyped up on marshmallows, of course, hopping around the grass and making a real big craziness attitude of herself, and just being absolutely wild. And for a moment, she laid down between my chair and the next camping chair and gazed up at me with this look of pure bliss on her face. And immediately I saw up that picture, if I had been able to snap it quick enough, of her laying there gazing up at me with a loving face. And I say that this that's a little bit odd for her, because a lot of times she's saying um, unkind things to me. She really, when she, I guess the people that you love are the people that you take out your worst times on. So she's really one of those kids who, when she's having a bad day, I'm the one who gets the full brunt of that bad day. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that it's not typical for her to gaze adoringly or lovingly at me at all. So it's it was really, inspiring. And immediately I thought, oh well, I could do a page about the firelight and the starlight and the twinkle in her eyes and how she's the sunshine and all that. And it made me think of the saying, "You are my sunshine," but at the same time I was thinking of a fire spread. So who knows, something might come from that. And all kinds of other things inspire me too. Like the life of my grandmother. She really, in dealing with her death and her belongings, I've come to the realization that she really lived. Like she when her spouse passed away, she didn't sit there and say, oh well, his life is up, so mine is up. She never would have done that. She never would have just sat there and waited for herself to pass on. She just kind of kept on living and kept on going and kept on dreaming. So that really, I hold a lot of respect for her, and so I'll end up doing a lot of work, or a lot of pieces based on the things I've collected from her, and the way that I envision she lived her life, since I don't think that I had enough conversations with her in my life to 100% know her. But in knowing her, or learning about her and her life, I've come to learn a little bit more about myself and my life, and the why I do things, and all that stuff. And that's a real big thing, is seeing the growth opportunities within your own life, and then capitalizing on them. That's a great thing to do. So here I am. I've got my pieces down, and I'm going to have to pick what I'm going to use in order to make the words. And a lot of times, if I'm in a hurry, or if I only have one night to do something, or if I'm, I have all these ideas and I need to get them down and stuff like that, I will often just use the heat gun to make it go quicker. But in this instance, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let it dry, and then I will come back and do the lettering. I will let you see that when I come back to work on it. Okay, so now that this has all dried, I've gone through and I've picked out what I'm going to use for lettering. So what I've chosen is, I have these stamps. They're letter stamps, and I love that they're just like, like a punch, or a, from the olden days when they would make newspapers and they just pick individual letters, and they're kind of like that kind of set. They're kind of very formal, uppercase, lowercase, and so on. So I really love these letters. I use them a lot, especially in my scrapbooking, because they're nice and clear and bold, and they just do anything that they fit into any of my layouts. So I really like that about them. And I think they're just a recollections set from probably Michaels or something. So I'm going to do the title in that, Pieces of Me. And then the other set I have is these little ones, and they're kind of like the engineering type of drawing, or the elementary school kind of drawing, where they have little dots at the end points of all the letters. I don't know if you can see that. Well, there it zooms in. I've had these for a really long time. I have used these letters so much that the majority of them I've had to get rubber cement and glue them back onto their wooden blocks, because I've used them so many times. I'm hoping this refocuses. There we go. So these are very vibrant colors, and the color that I want to use is this brown. It's a chocolate chip. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to ink the edges of my book in this chocolate chip. And this is a Stampin' Up! Ink pad. It's a water-based dye ink. So over time, water-based inks will fade, but because this is a Stampin' Up! Dye ink, it's less likely to, it's going to take more time to fade. And like I was saying, like these books of mine, they're not meant to be archival. They're meant to be expressions of what's going on in my life at the moment. So I love to distress edges and so on, so I'm basically just going to quickly run through and do that now. And because I've basically got this covered in, I guess you could call it a primer almost, because of the matte finish on it, that I can just go in and rub that a little bit to make it less strong, because it kind of sits on the surface of the acrylic, and it allows me a few minutes to move it around. So I'm not stuck just, oh well, that's where the ink is, that's where it's going to stay. I'm not stuck with that. You know, I can rub it in. I don't have to use my finger. I could obviously use several different, you know, sponges or whatever. I could even use the dauber that I'm using now to do that. But this is fine. My fingers are always messy. I went for a pedicure not too long ago, and the woman that was doing my pedicure, she says, "Oh, do you want a manicure while you're here?" And I said, "Oh, no. I get too artistic to do manicures." And she's like, "Oh, that just means you have to come back for another one." So I guess it just depends on how you look at it, but I'm not really into the pretty nails kind of situation. My nails right now, they're kind of chipped red and white here and there because we just had Canada Day, July 1st. So my children and I, we all three of us, we painted our toenails and we painted our fingernails in red and white for Canada Day. But yeah, when you're getting goopy and you're getting covered in ink all the time, it's really, to me, not worth the price of getting the manicures all the time, which makes me really happy that I don't have, like, that I'm a stay-at-home mom and I don't have a day job, so to speak, that requires me to have, you know, clean manicured hands all the time, because when you've got children, people kind of seem to assume that you're going to be, you know, doing art with them. It's not often that I actually allow them in my craft room to do art with me, but I get less notice, as long as it's not always brown. Brown is a hard color for a mom to get away with. You get some people, you should see some of the looks that I get sometimes when I've sprayed brown over top of a stencil while holding it with my fingers, and my whole hand is covered in brown. I get this kind of horrified, what if that's what I don't want it to be kind of look. Now, I'm one of those people who, I love ink, I love color saturation. I can't live without super color saturation. My emotion is often based on colors. So, for example, there's 2 kindergarten classrooms in my children's school, and with my children going to school just recently into kindergarten, we went for the orientation for the open house. And when I walked into one of the classrooms, it's all super brightly colored, and I immediately felt happy and welcome and overwhelmed by all the color and all the excitement of the room, and how this is going to be the perfect place for my daughter, because she's always this ball of energy, this lover of the light kind of child, and how, you know, amazing this space was going to be for her. And then I went into the other classroom, and it was very low key. It was very toned down. There was a lot of brown and neutral colors on the walls, and I thought, oh, you know, this is going to be the perfect space for my son, who gets quickly overwhelmed by the excitement of things, and he doesn't deal well with being surprised by things. So it's interesting to see, you know, how that plays into my life from my artistry, because I felt those emotions of the classrooms. And I'm all about the color saturation, but I like a lot of toned down colors, and my favorite color just happens to be like almost an olive green. So okay, so because I've chosen this brown, which you can see it now, for my letters, it's not going to, I can see from my finger that it's not going to show up on all of these because there's just too much activity on them. So, sorry, I'm going to grab a wet wipe here and clean some of that ink off my finger so it doesn't transpose onto everything else. Wouldn't matter much, but you know. Okay, so yeah, so I want to put pieces of you, but because it's going to be difficult to see that, I've chosen to color the puzzle pieces with gesso, or paint the puzzle pieces with gesso. You can do this a few ways. You can do it with your finger and layer it on and so on, or you can do it with a paintbrush. You can do the whole thing. You can do pieces of it. But what I'm going to do is just let me zoom a little bit more here. I'm going to do just parts of it. So I'll take my gesso jar here, and all I'm using is the Artist Loft. It's just from Michaels gesso. Gesso acts kind of like a primer for your projects. Then I'm just going to take my brush again, and I guess you can't see all of my letters here, so I'll start down here instead. But I'm just going to take a little bit on each letter and make a swipe through so that it's big enough for the letters to fit on, but I don't want to cover the entire color of the I want to tone down the brightness of it and the exuberance of the color of the picture, but I don't want to totally stilt the image. I still want to be able to see the brightness, the color, the warmth of the flowers on this picture. This is going to be a very difficult one to stamp because it's on the edge here. I might have to be a little bit more creative and just have it fall off the edge there. And that's one of the things that when you're doing multimedia and you decide to put in stamping and so forth, it's usually easiest to do that first, to do the stamping on your bottom layer as backgrounds and so forth, because once you start layering things onto your page, you end up with a lot of texture to your pages, and stamping on texture becomes quite the challenge. So that's all I wanted to do there. While that dries, I'm going to clean my brush, and then I want to show you a punch from Stampin' Up. I love this punch. I use it so much. It's called the Jewelry Ticket Punch, and it's, there you go. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, just give me a second. It's called the Jewelry Ticket Punch, and what it is just this tiny little thing. You know, you can make all kinds of tiny little things, tiny little tags for all kinds of stuff. But I love it because this letter set that I showed you, this one, my oldest one, it fits on there just absolutely perfectly. Every time it fits perfectly. So I absolutely love that punch. I love that punch so much that I've actually already worn one out and had to get it replaced by Stampin' Up because I wore it out. The blades wouldn't work. It was all offset, and I never dropped it. I just so overused it that the rivet ended up bending over time. And they said, oh, that's a design defect, we'll give you a new one. Or that is a manufacturer's defect, we'll give you a brand new one. I didn't even have to buy it. So that was good. Because they shouldn't be worn out that quickly. So I'm going to move this away to let it dry. And then I'm going to pull out this, move it away. So the next step is I've got this This is really a scrap piece of paper, and it's just craft color. The color is called craft. It's kind of a cardboardy kind of color, and I always, my husband calls me crazy because I keep little tiny strips like this. But the thing about them is, because I have this punch, and because I have a bunch of punches in this size, anytime you can fit that kind of thing on a scrap, I keep those papers. So anything that's about an inch, I keep it, and I keep it in my, I have drawers full of scrap material. Sorry, scrap paper. My husband thinks I'm absolutely crazy, and whatever, he can think that. I'm okay with it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to see where I'm going to be able to fit these punches, and at what angles, and so on, so that I can easily just go in and punch out my tags after I punch the letters. Oh, sorry, stamp the letters. So it's going to be the year 2014. I don't need to do this in any order, really. But I am going to stamp it first, and then punch it out afterwards. Because there's nothing worse than punching it out on a scrap piece of paper when you only have that much scrap of that color, and then realizing that you can't fit it on your punch, or what, you know. So I'll usually stamp things first and then punch them after. Or, you know, if you stamp it and then, or if you punch it and then end up trying to stamp it and you stamp off cue, or askew or whatever it's called. I still have that cold that I've had for weeks. It's kind of getting kind of frustrating here. And then I'm just going to punch it out because I can see it from the bottom that it's going to fit. There's my 2. There's my 4. And then this one, I'm not being too specific on what angles I do this at, because it doesn't really matter to me as long as the full letter or the full number is on the punched out image, on the punched out tag. Otherwise, I'm not too concerned about which direction the number runs at. And once again, I don't have any conformity here. Like, I guess in scrapbooking I don't have any real conformity either. I do a lot of loose-limbed kind of things in my scrapbooking, but I still feel this need for a bit of perfection when I do my scrapbooks. So that puts a little bit of stress on me, and I know that it shouldn't, because it's all still an expression and an enjoyment and so on, but it's this stress that I put on myself for you know, having things symmetrical and having things even and having things, you know, basically in a state of perfection when I do them. So all I'm doing here, I'll zoom in again. You still can't really see because I'm working with such small things. This is the number 4, and all I'm doing is I'm taking my finger dabber and I'm going around the edge to darken the edge of this tag. And the reason that I'm doing that is I like the defined edges of, I think you would normally call it distressing. I like the defined edges when I ink the edges of everything, and I do that a lot. I ink the edges of everything all the time. Kind of crazy like that. But yeah, with art journaling, there's really no conformity. There's really no, you must do this, you must do that. You know, you don't really need a page map. You can get your ideas from anywhere. I don't really use page maps, but I create my own. I'll have to show you my creativity. I guess you could call it a Bible later on, but okay. So I'm gonna bring this back, and this gesso is almost dry. But I'm not going to do anything down there or up there. I'm going to come down here. And this is where I'm going to put my year. And I'm going to make it so that I put my tags along here for 2014. And the way that I do that, I'm going to use my matte medium again. Now, water-based and acrylic-based aren't always friends. But I'm going to do this anyways. And I don't really mind if my water-based smudges or smears or anything like that. I'm not all concerned about that. If I was, I wouldn't do it this way. But the nice thing about this matte medium is that I can use it as a glue and as a finish, and I don't have to. The nice thing about acrylics is that they have a lot of longevity. So because this is so small, I'm gonna scrape over it and make sure it's attached. Wish my camera would focus. That'd be nice for you, hey? So there's the 2. And here's the 0. And here's the 1. The 1. That's good language. And here's the 4. So here's 2014. Alright, so we'll push them down into the mat that I already put on there. And now look, it's already, I know that I'm going to get brown on my brush. It's already getting the tip of my brush brown. So I know that my color is going to smudge. So I'm going to pick the directions that my ink is going to smudge and then go with it. Okay? So those are nicely stuck on there. They're glued on there. And yeah. And I'll just create a little bit of symmetry in here. And that's the other thing, is because I've created a base with the acrylic. So I've done the whole thing with the acrylic matte. So, or the acrylic gel. So now what I can do is I can take my acrylic and I can go around the edge, and all that water-based ink, it's going to move. It's going to give me an opportunity to move it a little bit more of however I want it to go. And I can either use that opportunity or I can avoid that opportunity. Knowing what it's going to do ahead of time allows you to make informed decisions of what your next step is going to be. So one of the key things is making sure that you use your art journals as learning tools. Use them to figure out new ways of doing things, and use them to figure out how things flow together, what will make your projects flow, and what will make them do things that you don't want them to do necessarily. So I'm just going to come off the edge here, and I'm just going to move that ink in a little bit. And of course, the more of the matte medium that you use, and the different kinds of strokes that you use will determine how much movement you get. How wet your brush is will determine how much movement you get, and so on. And that's a nice thing about these materials is learning how they move. So I'm going to take my heat gun to this, and I'm just going to turn off my video so that I can do the heat gun without blowing your ears off. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now that everything is all nice and dry, I'm going to put my title on now. So I'm going to start with my P, and I've laid out my stamps with the words that I want, just to make sure that I've laid out in the organization, because I have this habit of spelling things wrong when I'm doing one letter at a time, and that I think is a common error. So this is a really juicy ink pad, and what I want to be really careful of is I've got the letter, and then I've got the edge around the letter. And one of the problems that you can incur with these stamps is if you rock your stamps on a really juicy ink pad, what you end up with is a big mess and the square around it, and I really don't want that. So I'm being very, very gentle when I ink it, so that when I put it on the page I can rock it instead of rocking it when it's on the instead of rocking it when it's on the ink pad. In the event that I did rock it or did get ink on the outside edge, I would go through with a wet wipe and I would wash that edge so that I could make sure that my work was clear. Another thing you want to do is you kind of tap it a couple times and then you look at it, and if it doesn't have the consistency of ink that you're looking for, then you tap it a few more times until you end up getting the entire surface of the stamp in a fashion that you want. So this letter is going to be the difficult one because it's on an angle. So I've decided just to snug right up to the edge of the book and kind of slip pieces right on the edge. It's not separated, but it's better than being a big mess. If I had been planning ahead and knew what I wanted to do with my letters, I could have made the puzzle pieces first, complete with the lettering, and then attach them to the page afterwards. But to me, mixed media art is all about the layers and starting out with an idea and seeing where you get to. So the layers are a process of start to finish, and sometimes you know exactly where that process is going to lead. Sometimes you have a plan. Sometimes it's like anything else, any other project in life. You end up with an idea of what you want to do, where you want to go, how you want it to look when you're done, and you just kind of go with the flow after that and see where you do end up, because not everything in life works out as planned. And that's a really good metaphor, or these books are a really good metaphor for life in that fashion of you start out with an idea and you just kind of go with where it takes you. And a lot of the mixed media artists that I've followed on YouTube and followed in their blogs, a lot of them are in the same in that category of, I've got this idea, I've started here, and this is kind of where it took me. So now that I'm at this point, I am at a point where I need to decide if I'm done or if it needs more, or if I'm going to add more to it, whether it needs it or not, or what the plan is. So I'm going to decide that I am finished. My ink's got to dry a little bit on those words, but this is the finished title page to my book. Pieces of Me. Right? It's got the puzzle pieces. I'm going to take the dryer to those letters again to dry them in, because otherwise they'll just float on top of the acrylic medium. And there I go. A little bit lifelike. I just love these calendar pages. So, welcome to the introduction of my mixed media journal. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that when I post more that you'll watch them as well. Thank you for joining me on Lizzie's Workshop.